Hello everyone and welcome back to the HJW Gaming channel. In this video I'm going to be continuing my faction guides and looking at the good side faction Erebor, which is one of the most popular factions for good side players. So the starting commander given to players who choose Erebor is Dwalin. Dwalin is one of the best tier 1 commanders available to the good side. He's excellent for tiling, courtesy of the healing in his musician skill tree, but also an excellent damage dealer for PvP, with both his Durin's Blood and Experienced Warrior skill trees. In my opinion, he's very much a commander worth investing in long term, as all his skills are useful to him in combat, so he only tends to get better and better as his respect goes up. And once he reaches respect 10, you can unlock his twin axes, though in my opinion this unique item is not worth picking up, but he's still worth investing in just for the additional skill points. Erebor's starting quarters begins with Durin's Folk, which allows the use of dwarven units. These units are excellent early game, as the combination of high defense and reasonable attack allows for tiles to be taken with low losses. Your first T2 melee unit, the Shield Warden, has an excellent ability which allows you to reduce damage taken, and also has very good stats as previously mentioned. On top of that, you also gain access to a ranged unit very early as well, so you can inflict maximum damage by just having one of these Shield Wardens and then one ranged unit behind, and you'll be pretty set for most of the early tile taking in the game. As a further bonus, the Dwarven Footman also provides some of the best siege for good side units, so Erebor can quite often take the first keeps on the game very quickly, as you can inflict siege very early on. The tier 4 unit available is the Iron Warrior, which in my opinion is one of the best tier 4 unique faction units available in the game. Whilst they have poor speed, they have very good attack combined with excellent HP and defense. Additionally, their skills, which include full armor, which reduces physical damage received, and Battler's Bane, which increases their damage output against melee units, combines brilliantly with these stats. So basically they become a better boosted version of the Guardian, capable of not only receiving a lot of damage and being a good tank, but actually inflicting pretty good damage as well, so they become one of the best tank units in the game. These units combine brilliantly with the Dwarven commanders, such as Dwalin and Gimli, so make sure to use these commanders if you're planning on using Erebor. The second set of unit quarters unlocked by Erebor are the Númenórean men. Thirdly, you get the Rohirrim men, and then you're finally concluded by the Elven quarters. Therefore, if you primarily focus on using Elven or mounted commanders, then maybe Erebor may not be the best faction for you, as at the start you'll have to wait a long time before you get the units that fully suit your commanders. The unique ring skill, Son of Durin, can be unlocked after ring level 30 and reduces the conscription time of dwarven units by 10%. As this is only unlocked at ring level 30, it's not particularly good for early game, as you won't have it unlocked by then. However, it can be useful in mid to late game war in particular, as you can keep your troop numbers up by constantly having these units conscripting as fast as possible. It's worth noting though, this is definitely a nerf on Erebor's original buff when the ring skills were remanaged, as originally this gave you only a 5% conscription bonus, but it applied to all units. So now if you're playing as Erebor, if you want to make most use of their boost, you have to focus primarily on dwarven units. Location is where Erebor sees its biggest upside. Located in the northeast tundra, it is shielded from two sides by the edge of the map. In early seasons, the only nearby factions are Angmar to the west, Lothlorien to the southwest, and Rhûn to the south. Beyond Season 3, Gundabad actually starts closer in the west than Angmar, so you only ever have 3 nearby factions. Particularly in early seasons as well, Angmar and Rhûn are often less populated, though this is slightly balanced by Lothlorien, which is an extremely popular starting faction, so this will likely be your biggest threat. In later seasons, Gundabad is also a popular choice for evil players, so this will serve as an additional western threat. It's therefore wise for players planning on playing as Erebor to seek alliance with one of these factions in order to protect the western border. The capital, also called Erebor, is in a very tight pocket of mountains surrounded by impassable terrain. The only way through to Erebor is to hit choke points with 2 high power keeps, Lake Town and Dale, and a critical crossing as well. Erebor players will immediately fortify these choke points leading to the capital with forts, making it almost impossible to conquer unless you have extremely insurmountable higher numbers than the Erebor faction. Therefore, Erebor is one of the most easily defended capital regions in the game. As far as new territories go, expansion into new territory can be both a strength and a weakness of Erebor. There are many unclaimed keeps of various strengths nearby, with few crossings or tunnels providing barrier that need to be traversed, so planning for these keeps can begin from the first days of the server. With the dwarf unit siege ability, Erebor usually can, if well organised, become the first faction in the game capable of taking entry-level 160 power neutral keeps. However, this is slightly countered by the dwarf's main unit being extremely slow, particularly on movement speed, so marching there on the map can take a long time. Additionally, there's a lot of impassable mountains in the way, which gets doubly complicated since you need to navigate the maze-like terrain too. This can make Erebor very slow to expand, especially if you're not organised well enough, and also particularly slow to react to threats because of the slow unit's march speed, so you need to be proactive rather than reactive a lot of the time. The resources primarily available in Erebor land are very useful for early season keep building, as it's primarily ore and stone tiles. However, there is very limited access to lumber and extremely limited access to grain tiles. The primary source of resource for Erebor, the engine room as such, is the Iron Hills, which is a sprawling expanse containing, as you would expect from the name, huge amounts of high power ore tiles, though there's also a large amount of stone as well. This area is also very shielded by the impassable mountains, so it's very difficult for opposing factions to get here and reduce your production. Similar to the capital, Erebor has some of the best defended resource tiles in the game. And the last thing to look into location wise is your proximity to Dol Guldur if you're seeking to capture the ring. In this regard, Erebor is one of the best placed factions in the game, as it's only a stone's throw from Dol Guldur, with only LOTH for competition to take the keeps in between them and Amon Lank. So if you're looking to capture the ring, or believe you can, Erebor again is a brilliant faction for this due to the close proximity. Neutral units are few and far between for Erebor. They can access the Dale Watchman, a tier 3 ranged unit that gains bonus damage when fighting beasts or dragons, and also when battling on structure lands such as forts or keeps. These are men units with fairly average stats and are really only useful when trying to defend structure lands. Other than this, there are no other neutral units in Erebor lands, though once you expand outwards, there are also Bjorning camps available in Tower Enerath and Central Mirkwood. These tier 3 units are classified as beasts, and they can reduce physical damage as well as increasing their own damage late in battle. As fighting units, they're very weak, though they can have some utility as siege units. For training your commanders to high levels, particularly in early game, Erebor can be difficult. To easily farm experience, you acquire tiles which contain multiple armies which can be defeated with very few losses. For example, neutral unit camps, crossings or tunnels. The only neutral unit camps available in Erebor are the Dale Watchmen, which actually do deal a lot of damage and cause too many unit losses to be worth farming in the early game. This is in stark contrast to Lothlorien or Rohan, which can have excellent neutral units such as the Eagles or the Ents that can be experienced farms for high levels very quickly. The nearby Bjorning tiles are probably the only farmable units available to Erebor, as they count as large units, so if you take something like Bow Knights, you can deal a lot of damage to these, but you will still take a reasonable number of losses. The other issue with these is they can also take some time to reach for Erebor, as you have to path all the way to Tower Enerath or Central Mirkwood. Additionally, Erebor also has very few crossings and no tunnels at all, so these cannot be used for farming. The end result is having to train in what I would call the normal way, which is by taking higher and higher power tiles or through using the Mind Sharpener ring skill. This will be a lot slower than the options available to other factions and can cause you to be at a level disadvantage early on in the game if you first go to war. In particular, this is a massive advantage for Lothlorien as they have many farmable areas. Therefore, for Erebor, it's advised definitely do not go to war early with the Lothlorien faction. As far as beginner friendliness goes, Erebor can be an excellent faction. The starting units and commanders given are great, and your position will prevent you from losing too many resources should you start losing your first few battles. If you have good experienced leadership, and as a new player you follow the instructions of your fellowship, Erebor should provide a great starting fellowship for new players. So to summarise, Erebor is a very balanced faction, suitable for both beginners and experienced players, as the all-round performance of Erebor is extremely strong. The slightly slower early game, due to the slower levelling and slower marches, is usually outweighed by strong mid to end game advantages. Therefore, it's no surprise to see Erebor perform well in the majority of servers if it has an active faction. So as you can see on screen now, there's a good breakdown of all the things I've described in this video. I really hope you've enjoyed this and found it useful. If you have, please drop a like and consider subscribing, as I drop usually 2 videos a week and I plan to keep this series going. Anyway, with that, I'm out, and I really hope to catch you on the next one.